Welcome to the Market Motive Workshop. This week we're covering paid search and 7 practices that will destroy your account. That's a pretty amazing claim, but with us we have Larry Kim, the founder and CTO of WordStream, a PPC search marketing tools company, and of course Brad Geddes, your faculty chair for paid search, founder of Certified Knowledge, author of Advanced Google AdWords here at Market Motive. So a few logistics that are important for us to be able to make it through our workshop with the most here, and we'll do a little bit more in introductions in just a moment. This is being recorded. It'll be available to Market Motive members a few days after the production. Larry's been kind enough to tell us that we can offer up the PowerPoint slides as well, so we'll be sure to do that. We do have some guests in our workshop, so there's going to be 2 polls during the workshop, one in just a moment to help Larry and Brad customize what they talk about to the average spend that you have in PPC, so prepare yourselves for that. And then in the middle, we're going to put up a poll just to gauge your interest. Larry's kind enough to share with us, and of course he does have products at his company. He's kind enough, I know he won't be pitching them, but I'll probably ask him to share a little bit of that as we get to the middle. And then of course Market Motive makes a business out of providing up-to-date courses, and we'll ask what your interest is in there. So Larry's going to give us an overview. He's sharing his screen right now, and then about midpoint through our call today, we're going to open up the lines for questions and answers. And you can type in questions and answers to us anytime during Larry and Brad's presentation and talk here, and we'll try to get to those once we open up the questions and answers. Once we switch over to official time, we'll probably unmute your phone if you have a question. If you do not want us to unmute your phone or your PC microphone, let us know. Just say, don't unmute me, just answer my question, okay? Otherwise, we'll give it a shot because we love live conversation. So because you can type in questions and answers or responses to Larry at any time, I want to try it right now. For those of you who can hear our voice, go to the right-hand side of your screen. You'll find a questions window. Sometimes it says questions and answers, and I want you to type in an encouraging message to Larry right now. Show us that you're listening. We want to see folks actually open up that window. There we go. Go, Larry, go from Graham. Go, Larry from Todd. Rich, wow, great. David Satella's here. Look at that. Joe, Mark, everybody, look at this. Buzz, Ruthie, Michael, it's going so fast I can't even keep up with it. So thank you for those encouraging messages. And Larry, I think I saw a proposal in there that you'll have to look at later. Okay, last two tips for success before I hand it over to Larry. Close your email. Larry moves quickly. I want you to take at least 2 takeaway actions from this workshop on a notepad or on real paper. I also suggest that you open up a browser window and follow along with Larry and try and reach or find what he's teaching on the fly. It's a great way to start applying things and make a list for things that you apply to your daily paid search campaigns. So with that, we're going to do a little bit more speaker introduction in just a moment, but with Larry, it's over to you to show us 7 PPC best practices that will destroy your account.
How do you like my little logo there? I made that myself there. 100% protection guaranteed. All right. So thanks for that. And basically, just to kind of set the stage for what we're going to be talking about today, we're talking about best practices in PPC. And while all of them, I'm sure, are most certainly sort of written with the best of intentions, the problem is that they very rarely factor into consideration sort of the time or the cost involved with learning and implementing those kind of best practices. And so it's potentially sort of a big deal if you're sort of a smaller or medium-sized business, where the increased cost in terms of time or complexity of managing your accounts after having done these, complicated optimizations could be pretty substantial, and certainly, I for one am guilty of doing this. I've written many articles on super dorky advanced PPC topics which just aren't super applicable to smaller businesses. That just I would just say it's not worth the time or effort to devote to doing all this stuff if you have so much other stuff to do. And so basically, just so we're all on the same page here, I'm going to be talking about SMBs and small businesses. So when I say that, in my head, I'm thinking like companies spending less than $5,000 per month in ad spend. So that's kind of my definition here. We'll just use that for the sake of consistency here. All right, so just to kind of explore the point a little bit. What I mean by this here is that a paid search marketer who's managing a $15 million a month campaign versus I just found this one on I did a Google search this morning versus a small insurance agency based in Boston with a $500 a month budget according to SpyFu. Technically, all of the best practices that you read on Search Engine Land or Market Motive, they apply to accounts both big and small, but clearly the larger advertiser here has much more at stake, or alternatively, the smaller advertiser has a lot less at stake. And so the extent or degree to which advertisers should be adhering to these different various best practices varies greatly. And so the reason why this matters, I think, has to do with failure to recognize this can lead to one of two potential problems here. And so the first has to do with just advertisers getting fed up or overwhelmed and giving up. So personally, I love paid search advertising. I think it's an incredibly powerful tool for growing your business. And the problem of churn is a real problem, in terms of persistence. So here's a stat for you: the average customer lifetime on doing paid search for a new SMB advertiser, small business advertiser, is just around 5 months. And so the challenge here is what happens is that people just get overwhelmed and they just get confused and they stop using it, all within a span of on average 5 months, because it's really that complicated. And the other issue that comes up, I'd say maybe 10 or 20% of the time, is that smaller advertiser doesn't give up, but rather takes all this, all the different tips and pointers so seriously, and they end up over allocating their time investment in paid search management. For example, hiring agencies and or even dedicated people to bring stuff in-house, just trying to adhere to all these different best practices, which definitely are helpful and improve your account metrics, but could potentially result in negative return on investment when you consider all the management costs that you're incurring. And so we're just talking about a balance here in terms of the AdWords best practices. For a typical small business owner, how much is good enough? And the great news here is that there's many shortcuts that you can take for small businesses, and best practices that you could kind of ignore to get sort of 80% of the benefits with just 20% of the work. So that kind of brings me to my agenda for today, which is these best practices that you can potentially ignore. We're going to talk a little bit about how much is good enough and how that varies based on sort of your investment in paid search. We'll figure out all the different shortcuts. And Brad is on the line here today. He'll be weighing in on all the different topics that we're talking about today, as well as doing the Q&A today. So speaking of Brad, it's great to be on a webinar with you, Brad. It's been a while. So welcome. WordStreamers, I understand that roughly half of the people on the webinar today are kind of WordStreamers, because we jointly promoted this event. And so for those of you who might not be familiar with Brad, he's a really smart educator in the field of paid search marketing. Speaker, prolific writer and speaker at over 100 different events. That's a lot of events. It's a lot of miles. And he's a prolific author of the Advanced Google AdWords book, and look for a third edition of that coming out in stores later this year. And he's also the paid search instructor at Market Motive. Brad, did you want to say hello to people?
Hi, everyone. Brad's here. We'll get into a fun Q&A throughout the time. So fun to be here as usual and talking with you, Larry.
Awesome. And my name is Larry. I'm the founder of WordStream, and it's just great to be doing this webinar with you guys here today. We've got if you want to be live blogging, our session today, just use the hashtag MarketMotive in your Twitter tweets, and I have my phone here, so I can see that. And I thought we could just start with a little poll question to figure out who's on our call today. Can we launch the poll question, please?
Absolutely. Yep, Larry, I'll go ahead and put the poll up. By the way, just so you know, probably I kind of ruined it for you here being so loud. We've had 4 or 5 folks just ask if you can get a little bit louder, and what I'll do is I'll turn my microphone down so I'm not quite as noisy, and hopefully folks can turn their volume up safely. Just so Larry and Brad can, I'm going to go ahead and put the poll up now, just so Larry and Brad can kind of coach the crew here appropriately. We're going to put up what is your monthly PPC spend, and Graham sends it in pounds. That's awesome. But you can use the poll here. Yeah, for those of you in Europe, apologies that we didn't put euros or pounds on there. But the poll is on your screen. Go ahead and click, and we'll wait till we get to about 70% of you voting on this before. And then actually, Larry, if you don't mind, I'll share the results so everybody can see what the audience pans out to be. So far, with those of you clicking, 28% are 10,000 and up, 27% are at the $1,000 level each month. And only 8% are at 0 so far. So we're going to have a few more of you vote, and then we'll share so you can see the size of the audience. And by the way, Larry and Brad, you're not allowed to vote. I think neither one of you really gets onto the screen. Yeah, somebody's saying 20 rubles. And Matt will get the hashtag to you in just a moment here. I'm waiting for just a few more of you to click on the poll, and then I'll go ahead and close it and share it. And that way everybody will see what we're looking at, and Larry, you'll be able to customize what we're talking about to this crowd. Okay, 2 more clicks, and then we'll go ahead and close. There's 1, and there's 2, and here we go. Okay, so I'll share this, put it on the screen. Maybe you can see that right now. It looks like 10,000 plus 29%. Larry, can you see the results there?
I can't, but if you could just talk through
you got it.
Under 10,000.
Under 10,000, you're looking at a total of about, let's see, 47 and 15, plus another 10, 30. The majority of people, probably 70% of the people, are under 10,000 here. And then you have 29% that are 10,000 and up. So fairly well spread to that group there. And thank you for voting on that. And Larry, back over to you.
All right, thanks. So on to the best practices or worst practices, whatever you want to call them. The first one I have on my list here is this notion of always being testing. So what does that mean? Basically, do you really need to be constantly testing stuff? How much testing is enough? And guys, one of the things about WordStream is we work with so many thousands of advertisers that I'm able to pull up some data here. And earlier this morning, I was doing some research into figuring out sort of what's the breakdown of ad impressions according to the number of ads. And so to do this, I looked at a few thousand accounts and kind of tried to figure out what the typical distribution is. And so, as far as small businesses are concerned, like the accounts of people spending less than $5,000 a month, typically what you see is an 85-5 split. What that means is that roughly 85 of the ad impressions in a small business advertiser's account are from just 5% of the ads. And so when I look at the typical size of a small business AdWords account, this is some research that I pulled from October of just last year. On average, these accounts, what do they look like? They look like 2 campaigns, 9 ad groups, just 18 ads. And so that 5% equates to really 1 ad on average, soaking up the lion's share of the ad impressions. And so I was just thinking here, in order to kind of save time, I get it. You have other things to do, or other small businesses. You want to do everything, and so to save some time, you can actually get by with sort of having 1 great ad, and the rest of you guys could be. You could get by with them being mediocre. That's not to say that you couldn't optimize those other ads too. I'm just saying there's pretty steep diminishing returns for the typical small business. So I just thought we could talk a little bit about how to write this one great ad, and basically how great should it be. And so, again, I did some research for you guys this morning about what are typical click-through rates. And of course, as you know, click-through rates on ads, they vary greatly according to the prominence of the ad positioning. So, for example, if you're in the first spot, you would expect to get a much higher click-through rate than if you're in the 5th or 6th spot, which you have a much lower spot. But here on this table for you today, I just crunched some numbers, trying to give you a sense for, like, how great would your great ad have to be, and I'm kind of setting the bar very low here because I want to make sure that it's achievable. So I'm only going to ask for one of them, and I want it to be great. And basically, what I'm showing here is the median click-through rate in terms of like that's an important measurement of sort of ad relevancy. I just wanted to show here that there's a great deal of variance in terms of like the standard deviation on these ads are fairly high, like 7% standard deviation or whatever. So the idea here is that you can shoot to the average, that's the median value, but you could also try to get ads that were sort of in the best 15%, or the best 5%, or even the best 1% of advertisers. And if you're sort of at the best 15%, then you're roughly double the average. If you're the best 5%, you're roughly 3 times above the average. And if you're the top 1% of advertisers, well, then you can actually be 6 times the median. And so just some tables in terms of how great they need to be, and as for how could you kind of get an ad that had this kind of metrics without taking forever. I think one of the really cool shortcuts to sort of this upper middle class of ads is to use this technique called dynamic keyword insertion. And I'm just going to ask Brad if you could kind of share with our audience kind of how this works and what this is all about.
Sure. So dynamic keyword insertion is the ability to put a variable in the ad. In this case, the variable is the brace, the keyword, colon, what shows up in other cases, and close the brace. And when you write an ad this way, the keyword in your ad group that caused your ad to be displayed is put into the ad instead of whatever you would write typically. So if you had, in this case, your keywords were red couches, blue couches, green couches, and someone searched for red couch, the ad would automatically change to get prices on red couches. So when you've got unorganized accounts or larger groups of ad groups, not a lot of granular breakdown, this is a great way of increasing CTR for SMBs. So
thanks for that description. I just wanted to show how dynamic keyword insertion ads perform on average. So remember how I was showing you, Brad, earlier, the table of sort of like what the average click-through rate is, and sort of what would it be to be the top 15% of ads, the top 5% of ads, which are like 3 times the average, or the top 1%, which is like 6 times the average. I call the top 1%, I call those guys unicorns, just for fun. But basically, I wanted to see kind of on average how do ads with using dynamic keyword insertion perform on average compared to ads that do not. And so what you can see here is that in terms of the relative frequency of these ads, making them into above average click-through rates, or even the top 15 or top 5% of ads, you have a very good chance of kind of getting not like a top 2 or top 3% kind of ad, but a decent upper middle class kind of ad, just by using this little trick, the dynamic keyword insertion in your ads, and that can be very, very helpful. As for the top 5 or top 1%, what happens if you notice there's like an inversion happening there. So what it's saying is that as you get into these really, really awesome ads to get like 20, 30, 40% click-through rates, those are less likely to be, kind of employing dynamic keyword insertion. They're more likely to be using like just really solid copywriting and talking about your guarantee or your offer or whatever. But if the goal is just to get to good enough, I think dynamic keyword insertion is your meal ticket to upper middle class for ads. Just two important disclaimers. So that was that it doesn't tend to produce like the stellar, what top 5 or top 1%. And the other disclaimer is you sometimes end up in these situations I call these AdWords jackpots, because it kind of reminds me of hitting a row of lucky sevens in Vegas. Jackpot, I just hit a row of big data solutions. So sometimes you got to just do searches on the keywords and try to make sure that your stuff is still a little bit differentiated and that you're talking about your core value proposition and all this stuff. But with those caveats, I think should you always be testing? Absolutely, sure. But if you don't have all day, just focus on that one great ad. You'll get most of the benefit if you're a small business, and just leverage this dynamic keyword insertion to get a decent showing out of the gates. Anything to add on this or comments, Brad?
No, the only comment I would say is the larger you get, the less you want to rely on it, because usually there's an inverse relationship with DKI and click-through rate versus conversion rates, where the better your DKI CTRs, the worse your conversion rates get. For larger companies. For smaller ones, this is spot on.
Awesome.
Yep, and a quick question from the audience here, too, we're seeing is how well does dynamic keyword insertion work when it's in the description lines?
It still works well, and in fact, in those jackpot ads that Larry just showed, when you're in those situations, if you're going to use it, move it to the description lines and make a headline that does pop.
Awesome. I didn't do those numbers.
And by the way, Larry, just folks are dying to hear you. Larry, they're asking if you could speak up just a little bit. Probably 15, 20 people are saying they can't hear you at all.
Sure. Just saying, I didn't run the numbers on like how it differs depending on where the positioning is of the dynamic keyword insertion. So unfortunately, I don't have a straight answer for that one right now. But let's move on to number 2, which is a very fundamental best practice that's been kind of ingrained in all of our heads since fundamental 101 of paid search, which is to always separate your search and display campaigns, right? When you create a new campaign in AdWords, it asks you what type of campaign do you want to create. Is it a display campaign or a search campaign or both? And the best practice has always been to separate the two. So what if I were to tell you here, and this is Morpheus here, he's saying 1 out of 5 businesses, small businesses, use the Google Display Network, meaning 80% of you guys, if you're a small business, 80% of them aren't leveraging or tapping into the power of this display network. And the reason is because it's just a lot of work. It's a lot of complexity. It's a lot of new things that they need to learn. And so I think that's really unfortunate because when I look at, again, some numbers that I pulled this morning, when I look at different average cost per clicks, of course, across the different networks, sort of the Google search network versus the display network, what I find is that you can potentially get tremendously cheaper clicks on the display network versus the search network. Look at jobs in education. Like $1.80 was the average that I computed this morning versus just 34 cents for the display network. So like that's almost like a fifth of the cost. And other competitive industries like finance, business and industrial, there's value to be had on the display network in terms of like just lower prices in competitive verticals. And similarly, I ran some numbers on typical conversion rates, and just to see like how does display convert in comparison to search. Now, search is still the king in terms of like they have an overall better conversion rate because there's a lot of intent with those searches, but display wasn't all that far behind. So if you look across all the industries, the numbers that I ran this morning were showing that display was just a point behind, so that's roughly 20% less. And there were actually a few industries such as travel and autos and vehicles, where you can see that the conversion rate on display ads is even higher than the conversion rate for Google search. And why is that? I think it's because travel and autos, I think those are like cool products that you kind of want to see in an image, as opposed to just a text ad. So perhaps that's why they do a little bit better. So when you combine sort of the average cost per click and the average conversion rates, I can give you kind of a rough idea for what you might expect to pay for, for cost per action, like your cost per lead or cost per sale for different industries. And basically, you can see that they're very comparable and in many cases lower on the display network because of those two factors that we were talking about, like the lower cost per click and comparable conversion rates. And so essentially, there's even more benefits. So WordStream, my own business, like we use AdWords to do marketing of our software products, and in addition to just getting our ads out there, we got a ton of other secondary benefits beyond just cost per conversion. We had a huge impact on brand recall. So we started running display and remarketing ads, and then here's what you're looking at on the screen is literally my Google Analytics. It's the direct traffic, so people who typed in www.wordstream.com went directly to my website without going through, say, like an article or an ad. And you can see that when we turned it on, we had a huge increase in brand recall, and I think that there's a lot of benefits for small businesses to use the remarketing in terms of helping with the conversion rates. It's also ideal for advertisers who are perhaps, advertising in a smaller geographic area. Perhaps one of the challenges is low impression volume on the search network. And so, recently I was really interested to learn that just a few months ago, Google introduced this new kind of a campaign type. They replaced the old one with a new thing called Display Select, and it's actually the default option. And so it's saying what they're saying here is that it's a little bit more picky and more selective in terms of how it displays the display ads, and it tries to actually compete with the cost per actions of your search campaigns. And on average, they're telling us that it generates 15% more sales at a comparable cost per action on average. And so when I think about the challenges and the realities of like being in the trenches of running a small business and also wanting to get more sales, should I be separating my search and display campaigns? Absolutely, if you have the time and expertise to do that. But if you didn't, I certainly wouldn't fault you for giving out this new campaign type a try for a week and see how that goes. Any thoughts or anything to add there, Brad?
I don't, because no one I work with is willing to be a guinea pig to try it out, or they've already separated out display, and so they're not going to take a step backwards. So I actually haven't tried this out yet. I'm waiting for the first guinea pig.
Well, we work with a lot of like these smaller, busy guys, and this is I view it as a quick win for the small business. And generally, what happens is that like for the handful, maybe dozen or so cases that I've been involved with, is that it provides sort of the motivation to then see like oh yeah, this is something interesting. Kind of, it's almost like a stepping stone to motivating them to do more work. But yeah, that's sort of what we're seeing here.
Okay.
A lot of feedback coming in from folks too in there. We see Buzz say a lot of SMBs do only one or the other, but Devin's saying they've tried it out and it works really well. A lot of questions as to whether people should use Display Select. Any feedback on that?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about here. That's the new campaign type, the Display It's this one here, search network with display select. And I'm saying, look, if you already have done the work of separating your campaigns between search and display, then there's no need to do this because that would be a step backwards. But if you're like most small businesses, like, and I'm telling you, 80% of them in that spend range, like spending less than $5,000 a month, 80% of them are not tapping into the power of the Google Display Network, which is like the biggest ad network on the planet. For those people, if the reason is because they're not using it because of not having enough time or too much effort, then I would definitely be thinking about just trying it out and seeing how that goes. Because as I was saying, there's so much potential there.
Excellent feedback, thanks. And folks, I do see the questions. Brad, I'm going to move you to Organizer just so you can see some of the questions, if you don't mind, and maybe just field a few of those as they're coming in, okay?
Sure.
All right.
Are there any that we need to address right now?
There's a good number of them, but I think you go ahead and stay on. We're going to go ahead and go back and see if people still have the question once you've finished with the presentation, and if they do, we'll bring it up live. Otherwise, we'll try and handle them as they stream in and keep you on track, Larry.
So moving along, so what's a good click-through rate for my small business, or any metrics for this matter? And so, I've read a lot of articles where they say you need to get, this percent or that percent or whatever. And one of the challenges is that, like I was saying earlier, it's really dependent on how much you're investing in paid search. I mean, you don't have to kill yourself to get like a 5% click-through rate if you're only investing $50 in search or whatever. So the solution here is to use sort of these contextualized benchmarks. And for this, I just want to show you something that I developed here. It's called the let me just see here. It's called the AdWords Performance Grader. So this is a free tool. You can just, it's absolutely free, no obligation or whatever. You just go to www.wordstream.com/Google-AdWords. And what this is, it's a free AdWords auditing tool. But unlike a lot of the other auditing tools out there, it grades your key performance metrics like click-through rate, like quality score, like conversion rates. It grades them on a curve, okay? So what it's doing is, it says like you're 19% here, okay? What it's doing is it's coming up with these metrics based on looking at comparables. So it's looking at other companies in your industry. So like say you were like in business and industrial or in travel and tourism. Like it looks at companies in your industry but also within your budget range. So in this case, the guy is spending 1,821 euros per month on average. And so the scoring in terms of the metrics are all relative to other comparable advertisers spending roughly the same amount and within the same industry. And so you can see, for example, I won't go through the whole report, but you can see it like this idea of quality score. This guy has an average of 2.6. Well, this curve here is what we see for other people in that industry and that size of spend. And so we're able to kind of really contextualize those numbers. And in this case,
Larry, what's the URL of the grader? We've got a bunch of people asking. We're trying to find it.
It's www.wordstream.com/Google-AdWords.
Okay, we'll go ahead and put that into the messaging here so everybody can paste that in and take a look at the same thing. And if you look at your chat window, you'll see that there. Thanks, Larry.
What's great about this is just it's providing you sort of like the context. So like, in boxing you wouldn't have like, I don't know, the heavyweight champion guy, Geico or whatever, boxing against sort of the little insurance guy spending $50 a month, on his local insurance business. Like that would be silly. So that's why they have different weight classes. And so what's really interesting about this tool is that we're able to benchmark your performance on more of a kind of a more level playing field, if you will, in terms of like having you see how well you're doing against other people with similar amount of investment dollars of ad spend at stake or being invested. Here's one interesting one. It has to do with account activity. So like, how much work is enough? That's a great question that people always want to know. Am I doing enough in my AdWords account? And so what this is doing, it's saying, well, this guy, he's done 10 ads or 30 campaigns, but for other people in this industry who are spending £2,000 a month, it's kind of on the low side in terms of the amount of effort that he's putting into managing the account. So I'm not going to go over the whole report, but as you can see, the key, what I'm trying to say here is, when you see those benchmarks and stuff like this, even the benchmarks that I provide, first of all, don't be discouraged, because a lot of times these benchmarks are based on kind of like expert, top 1%er type achievement. But if you are going to use these benchmarks, then consider using these sort of comparable metrics within your industry, that are indexed based on your company size. Anything to add here, Brad?
And Brad may have himself muted there, or he's completely absorbed in the AdWords grading tool.
Oh, I had muted myself because I was answering questions, and I have a keyboard that's not the quietest thing in the world. So no, I don't. But what I want to take like 15 seconds to explain, because I see a lot of questions about this, is conversion versus click. So when Larry says click, that's someone going to your website from a search result or from a display ad. If someone does an action on this site, like fill out a form, call your company, buy a product, that's a conversion. So when back in the display section, when Larry was kind of showing click-through rates, CPC, and conversion rates, what he was kind of showing is CPCs were cheaper for display, but you paid for a click, and conversion rates were a little bit less for display than search, but because the CPCs are cheaper, the cost per action, what you pay to get someone to fill out a form or take some action, is roughly the same-ish depending on industry for those two. Sorry, that answers like a third of the questions I was looking at, so I thought that would be a useful thing to toss out there. Benchmarking is good. I didn't catch it all, Larry, but the WordStream Grader tool is a great place for SMBs to kind of get a good look. So I would actually suggest everyone who's got a smaller account and needs some ideas, go try it out. It's actually really useful for that. All right, Larry, back to you.
All right, so our next one here has to do with the use of something called broad match keywords. And so Brad, can you explain for our audience, sort of, just so we're all on the same page, what do they mean by broad match keywords and this notion of match types?
Sure. So the match type is essentially how closely related your keyword is in your account to the search query, what someone types in a search engine before your ad can be displayed. So like with exact match, Google wants the search query and your keywords to be really, really close. So in this example, formal shoes. You could be shown for a formal shoe, a singular or a misspelling, but you wouldn't be shown for formal sandals. Both those words have to be in the query, and nothing else has to be in the query. Phrase match is kind of the same thing as exact, except there can be additional words on either side, but they must be in that same order. With these, by the way, if that seems confusing to you, it's because Google has something known as close variation match, which is on by default, which basically says exact match by default does not have to be the actual user's query. It can be a misspelling or a singular plural, something like that, which is a change from the past. You can switch that setting so it's the exact same thing. Modified broad match is one of my favorite match types. It essentially says, especially for small businesses, it basically says, I don't care what order the user types the keywords in. I don't care if a user misspells it or uses a singular versus a plural keyword. All I care is these words that I put in my account, and I put a plus sign in front to denote these are really important to me, are in their search query. And so that would be the modified broad with plus formal plus shoes. If you look at your query and say, we sell shoes, but I don't care if they're evening shoes, dress shoes, sandals, whatever, then you could do formal plus shoes, which basically means shoes has to be in that query or a singular version, but I don't care if it's formal or black shoes. And then broad match is basically saying anything Google deems similar, you can show your ads for. So formal shoes could show for like black sandals. They're both a shoe type. They're Formal as black's a color, formal shoes, and so broad gets a little broad in my opinion, but I really like modified broad for a lot of reasons. What do you use for small businesses, Larry? Do you like broad or modified broad?
Well, that's a great question, Brad. So I looked at some accounts this morning, and I was looking at kind of getting a sense for how much impression volume gets accrued to what type of match types. Now, in Google in general, something like 70% of the impression volume goes to keywords set to broad match. But on small business in particular, like just the company spending less than $5,000 a month on paid search, I was pretty surprised to see that 90% of the impression volumes were being accrued to keywords that were set by the advertisers to broad match. And so, to me, it's a kind of a sign that says that there's potentially a lot of volume out there that you could be you're missing out on if you're not using broad match. For this particular scan, I did not differentiate between broad match and modified broad match. Like there's no difference in terms of the type.
Can I ask a follow-up there? Is this a chicken and the egg issue though? Because it's something like, and I forget the actual number, but it's something like 70% of all queries on Google do not have an exact match variation in any account anywhere in the world. It's the vast majority of queries. So is the broad match getting queries because exact doesn't exist, or is broad match getting queries because there's just so many query variations out there? Any sense on that?
I just think that as far as our small business listeners are concerned, the point here is just many an article has been written about the dangers and the problems associated with being excessively broad, using broad match. But I would say that, like, I don't know the answer to your question, Brad, but the key takeaway, I think, is just that there are some benefits specifically for SMBs when it comes to broad match. You can reduce the clutter in terms of, like, not having to have a ton of stuff to manage in your account. You can, certainly you don't have to spend a ton of time on keyword research. Keyword research is regularly one of the top 3 biggest time sucks of paid search in all of our surveys. It's really great for local businesses where there's like not a ton of search volume on the keywords that they're interested. But all of this comes at a price, and that price is just the control, like the lack of you're losing some control over you're turning over the keys to Google in terms of how you want your ads to show up. But yeah, I don't know. Did you have anything to add there, Brad?
No, I just if you are worried about broad match in general, modified broad I find converts just as well as phrase match, and you don't have to deal with all these additional things. So I think it's a great match type for SMBs to use.
I would go one step further. Like for the small businesses that I work with, I even tell them just forget about phrase and exact match and just exclusively use modified broad match, because it's just such a time saver for them. I don't know if you would agree with that or not, but like this is for the smaller businesses.
Yeah, no, for smaller businesses, I have no problem with that at all. Especially if you've got lack of either conversion tracking or lack of enough conversion tracking data to add the proper exact matches. Modified broad's great for that.
So that brings me to our 5th one here, which is to optimize for conversions. Now, I mean, we run poll questions all the time on like what's the most important KPIs and what do you optimize for, and no surprise, optimizing for conversions always comes out as the #1 way to manage your bids. But I was supposed to change that slide picture. But the challenge here is with small businesses, like if you've got a $500 a month or $5,000 a month budget, then well, first of all, out of the gates, 50% of the small businesses don't have conversion tracking turned on. it's just very difficult for them. They, their website is run by some guy, your brother-in-law, and you don't have a good relationship with that guy. And you don't want to bother him or something. It's not the same. And so sometimes they're just not able to get this thing working, and so then you're in trouble. Alternatively, there's another challenge that comes up all the time is that you have kind of small numbers of sporadic conversions. Like, you might go a week with like 1 or 5 conversions, and it's just not a ton of data to use to optimize your bids. And so for this, I would certainly, in these situations, consider just optimizing for clicks, like the cost per clicks, like going after the cheapest clicks, or even just optimizing by click-through rate. So like, bidding more for the keywords that appear to be resonating, like that appear to be generating more interest. Anything to add to that, Brad? I know you mentioned you had a lot to say about like how to work with these situations.
The other data point I would like to add, and I didn't catch everything you were saying as I was answering questions still, but the other point that I like to add to this, because you've got sporadic data, is bounce rates or time on site, and attaching Google Analytics into AdWords so that you have this intermediate number. So if you've got 50 clicks and 100% bounce rate, it's probably not a good click or a good keyword. Where if you've got 50 clicks and a 20% bounce rate and no conversions, hey, those are great interactions. And so I find if you've got sporadic conversions, that using the analytics as intermediate signals to the quality of the traffic will still let you do some optimization. It may be for quality over actual conversions, but at least it's on a number that shows you're getting the correct type of visitors to your site.
Awesome. I agree 100%. So I just wanted to add some encouragement here in terms of, like, if you're feeling, wow, with paid search, there's a lot to learn, and there's a lot of stuff that I need to be doing here. But the reality is that the bar is lower than you might think. And so, again, some research based on, what does a typical account look like in terms of, what does it look like? And you can see that, again, it's 2 campaigns, 9 ad groups, 18 ad texts, 212 keywords. We're not talking like, I mean, this is doable. Like, we can do this. And in terms of like how active people are, like 53% of advertisers only touch their account once every quarter. Only 1% of them, do even one change in the last quarter, in the last like 3 months. And so, like, the idea here is that it's just about adopting a workflow, kind of where you pace yourself, and you just say, like, I'm going to just slow and steady wins the race. I'm going to just focus on like one thing this week. Spending 20 minutes a week on your paid search accounts, that would put you in the top 1% of most active small business accounts in the world. So the bar is low, and the prize is yours for the taking if you can just, motivate yourself to do this kind of stuff. Anything to add there, Brad?
Nope, that's perfect.
So we've been talking a little bit about, how best practices, are impacted by your budget, by how much you spend, and how the degree of compliance with the best practice is completely dependent on how much you're investing in paid search. And so essentially we're talking about the costs of PPC management. So I just wanted to share a little bit of how I think about the problem here. So, like, for example, suppose you're spending between $1 and $999 US dollars per month on AdWords, and these ranges are approximate. So like, I don't mean it to be a hard cutoff or anything, but just as a kind of a general ballpark number. If you're spending, like, say, $50 or $100 on paid search, you should be using AdWords Express. I mean, this thing, it's like the autopilot AdWords, where you just swipe your credit card and it writes your ads for you. It manages things. The reason is just because if you're spending 10 hours on managing that account, that's like far, like that's way out of whack in terms of like the value of your time. It's so much more than the $50 or whatever you're spending on AdWords per month. And so that's a pretty simple autopilot solution that has literally no management costs associated with it. You know, when you're in the middle range of anywhere from like $1,000 to $25,000 a month, and this is again just approximate numbers. It doesn't have to be, you know, the exact 1,000 to 25,000. Well, then you're kind of in this area where you know, you're doing the work yourself or using tools such as WordStream or any of the other tools out there. In terms of the cost, it's just the cost of your time, and the software products. You know, they're anywhere from like $200 to $500 a month in terms of the management costs. And then once you get into the bigger budget ranges, that's when you start considering like maybe bringing in like a dedicated person to do this kind of work, or hiring an agency, which, you know, dedicated person might cost you here in Boston, it's around $65,000 a year. And if it's an agency, anywhere from 10 to 15% of the ad spend is pretty typical. But it's the reason is because at those levels of ad spend, you can definitely justify the additional expenses because, you know, there's a lot of return on investment to be had on those ad dollars. And so that's just how I think about the challenge of you know, the costs of PPC management and how to go about allocating money to manage it. Anything to add there, Brad?
The only thing I would add is that there, even at a 10 grand range, there are times that an agency is a good solution. If you're not going to manage it yourself, then an agency can be good at lower numbers, but you get to a point you're going to spend, you know, 20% of your spend on management. But if you're going to spend 20 grand a month and never look at it, then you're better off giving an agency 15% of that spend who will. But outside of that, no, these are pretty good numbers overall to benchmark things from.
Excellent.
Yeah.
By the way, just as a point of order, Larry, I know that we're going to lose a lot of people right at the top of the hour. That's in about 6 minutes. We may want to go ahead and get to some of the questions and answers as soon as possible, put up a poll so we can get some feedback from folks as well. There's I think over 100 questions that have come in, so we want to make sure and get to those as quickly as we can. Brad and I are typing answers as fast as we can. So, Larry, I'll leave it to you logistics-wise just to make the most of the time. And Brad and Larry, if you're willing to stay after the hour, some of you who are willing to stick around will try and answer those questions as well. Larry?
Awesome. So just recapping, that's our last slide actually. You know, the best practices that we talked about, well, I would just summarize, your time isn't free, and so, you know, sometimes good enough is good enough for small businesses, and you should be thinking about some of the shortcuts that we talked about today. You know, key thing is just don't be discouraged, don't give up. You know, you can be successful here with just a little bit of time and effort. Okay, so is it okay if I mention something about my products here at this point?
Yeah, go ahead, Larry.
Yeah, so just wanted to give you a pitch on WordStream. What do we do? It's a paid search management platform for small businesses. So what do we sell? We sell something called the 20-minute PPC work week, and as its name suggests, it's this tool that kind of finds the 10 things to do in your account this week, and it literally takes 20 minutes to do, like finding negative keywords or optimizing bids or deleting keywords, and it's just a very simple software for people who don't have all day to work on their paid search campaigns. One of the new features that we just released, it has to do with hosting and creating landing pages. So remember how I was saying like 50% of the people don't even have the conversion tracking turned on, and that's because like the complexities of managing landing pages. So we have like, you know, complete, you know, landing page creation and hosting software tools. So I just want to just open up the poll for our audience. Thanks so much for listening in here. We've got a couple offers here. Did you want to read off the different options and launch the poll?
Absolutely. I put the poll up there. Larry and Brad, you don't get to vote. The poll just gives you a chance to tell us what your interest is. Larry's been kind enough to teach just gratis for us and offer this for everybody who's attending, and so it'd be awesome if you could let him know if you have interest in either a live demo of the WordStream PPC Advisor or a one-on-one walkthrough with the AdWords grader that some of you have been clicking on. And Teresa, I know you have some questions on that we'll try and answer in just a moment. In addition, Brad has been teaching with Market Motive for some time now. He takes a coached course, a master course, and then we have a self-paced course for large teams. Sometimes we have thousands going through at any one time, but the coach course is special for a limit of 20 people per quarter. And if you have interest in Market Motive getting back to you with some information on that, just go ahead and click and let us know. And of course, you can also tell us, hey, no need, I just like the free training. And that works. So we'll leave that up for a moment, and then what we're going to do is a lot of you have been asking lots of questions, and we'll call on you specifically if you have multiple unanswered questions in there, and give Brad and Larry a chance to answer you specifically. This is a great chance to get some feedback from experts who spend their time building tools and best practice processes for a wide range of markets. So far we have, how many people have taken the poll so far? About 45%. Let's go ahead and get the rest of you just to click on one of those, and then we'll move it open. And Buzz, we get it. You're in the Starbucks. Don't unmute me. right on there. We're not going to hear all those orders coming across. Absolutely fine. Yeah, and actually, this I got to say, Brad, I've not seen a more interactive crowd in a long time. This is a great group of people asking great questions, and we're going to try to get to those in just a moment. For those of you who can, go ahead and click on that poll. In the meantime, Brad, can you still see the questions? Do you want to read some of those out loud and see if we can get some answers for those?
Sure. So let me hop in here, and this is from Buzz. Oh, hey, Larry, the big question, actually, this was asked a few times. When you did those numbers for the display network information, were they display only, or do they include remarketing information?
It's all baked in. I didn't. It was just all display.
Okay, so it's not. So, do you have any idea, like a percentage that was remarketing? If it was, 10 or 50? I mean, any rough range?
I don't have that number off the top of my head, but what I can say is that remarketing is really the low-hanging fruit of display, and that's you just put on your remarketing code and kick up your feet and let the money kind of roll in, kind of thing. That is the way to make your display work way better. So I would imagine it's a good amount of that, but I don't have the exact number. Sorry.
I see one comment here that says there's no analytics for the display network, and that's not true. You get all the analytics for the display network you want via AdWords or via analytics. So some of these look like they're continuations of questions that either Michael or I answered earlier, so there's not full context all the time. But let's see here. What's some other good questions? Oh, hey, so here's a question. So at the end, Larry, people want to know, should they separate out display? Should they use the new system? Can you just, I know you mentioned this, can you touch on that one more time? What's the best way to handle the display select items?
If you're not currently using display network at all, then at least try it out, okay? If you're already using display, then there's no need to use this.
Okay, and let's see here. We have a lot of good comments. Link. Oh, URL greater link. A lot of questions to a greater link. Wow, Michael, you're not kidding. I'm like halfway through the questions here. And Larry, while you're, there we go. There's the greater URL.
It's called the AdWords grader. So if you just go to Google and Google AdWords grader, it should be the first thing on the list.
All right, so here we go. So I've been in e-commerce for 13 years, mostly SEO, starting to get into SEM, and wondering if there is a way to grab order totals for conversions. Like if a customer spends $100 or $200 a click, so essentially with AdWords, can you get the actual conversion numbers from that particular user or checkout?
Is it like a value track? Is that what you're thinking, Brad?
Value track, GA integration. I read the question, but the answer is yes. There's actually several ways to do it. So if you could use analytics and import it into AdWords, you can also use Google's conversion tracker. They've got a variable you can put in it. While that sounds confusing, it's actually not that hard. Hey, Larry, here's a question on your grader tool that came up a couple times. If someone's got an MCC account, how do they get to the AdWords grader? Should they log into that individual account, or can they go through the MCC?
You can use the MCC. What it'll do is it'll just say, okay, you logged in with an MCC account. Can you pick the account that you want to grade? So you'll have to run a report on, it's like a two-step process if you use an MCC. Whereas if it's not an MCC, it doesn't even ask that step.
Okay. So here's another question for you. Should you have an ad group with exact match and modified broad, or should you separate out ad groups by match type?
Yeah, I think that's like for the small businesses that I work with, I think that's overkill. I think that adds a lot of complexity in terms of management. I think that there isn't a heck of a lot of difference. Like Google is making exact match and phrase match. They're kind of making them work more similarly. Like there used to be a bigger difference, but they're kind of converging, and so I think it's kind of one of those areas where it's potentially you could just take a shortcut. I don't know. What do you think, Brad?
I was reading the next question. I forgot my own question. Oh, yes, the match types. I forgot my own question. For small accounts, I agree it's overkill, way overkill. For larger accounts, if you've got a really massive account, it's actually useful to put them together as well. If you've got a mid-sized account, I actually like putting them in different campaigns, like one campaign's modified broad. You're trying to find words that really convert well. When you find them, you move them to a different campaign and exact match, higher daily budgets, really watching the conversion. So I think that goes directly to management time and what you can reasonably accomplish.
Yeah, excellent. I have an idea just for logistics here because there's so many good questions. There's a lot of people actually who have stayed after the hour, and let's switch to a system where if you raise your hand, and there's a mechanism to raise your hand, we're going to go ahead and unmute you and allow you to summarize your questions for both Brad and Larry. And I think that's a great way to focus on the folks who have stuck around here. And by the way, for those of you who must leave, if you do have to go ahead and put in something that you think we could do better or something that you particularly enjoyed. And I know that both WordStream and MarketMotive will follow up, and you can ask your questions of the people who reach out as well. But I'm going to scan right now for raised hands, and I see Graham is here, so got a raised hand. Graham, you're live. Go ahead and ask your question. Okay, and Graham may not have been prepared for me to do that. So we'll go down and check out any others. And I have... I'm going to try and pronounce this as a Quana. Quana, we're going to unmute you. Do you have a question for Brad and for Larry? And again, I'm surprising people, I think, with
You're
this.
You're catching everyone off guard.
Yeah, it's okay. I mean, I think most of the MarketMotive crowd knows this is how it works. You're going to get asked if you ask a question. Craig, I've unmuted you. Do you have a question for Brad and for Larry?
Hi, yeah, I do. I'm Craig. I'm from Ireland. And I work in the online gambling niche, so we're actually a bingo site. My question is, we spend about £100,000 monthly, and most of our traffic and conversions come via brands, other people's brands, but obviously our quality score is very low because we're not really targeted. Is there any way to increase quality score on brands keywords?
Brands that you don't have, right? So you're
yeah, well, these will be competitors' names.
The best you can do is make landing pages that are comparison pages that compare you to the other brand, because that way the page is slightly relevant. But from a click-through rate standpoint, really, because you can't use DK with brands, so it'll get you in a lot of trouble.
Of course, yeah.
It's really all about trying to get those ad testing up. But if you break quality scores of 5 or 6 on other person's brands, when the brand's a high-intense brand, you're doing pretty good.
Okay, and if I may, one other question, if possible.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so the cost per clicks in our industry raised from between about £80 to £160 per click. However, we're not willing to really put our max cost per click extremely high. Would you recommend putting the max cost per click higher than Google's estimate for first and just seeing how it goes, like testing it, or kind of just go how we're going?
I would go where you're going. In industries where Google's suggesting 100 to 200 pounds a click, and you do the backwards math and you say, wow, they've got to spend $1,000 a month to ever make that even, then I would go based upon your math, because there are people paying $1,000 a click, and most industries can't absorb that profitably, and it's usually not worth it outside of some very specific instances.
Okay, no problem. So we'll just
Larry, if you have anything, Larry, feel free to chime in. I know these are usually not the accounts you do a lot with.
I would suggest maybe have you tried the display network at all? When you talk about cost per clicks that high, I wonder if
Yeah, I had a meeting with Google in Dublin last month, and they're chatting with us about doing display network because currently gambling's not really allowed on it, but they said there is ways around it. So yeah, I'm hoping to get that done soon.
Awesome.
It's a fun industry when Google's helping you get around their own rules.
Yeah, good old Google.
All right, thanks, Craig.
One other idea we have is sometimes we've got customers in these kind of gambling or other kind of those types of industries, and I heard that the restrictions are a lot less on Bing. So I just think about
Yeah, but if you're in Ireland, Bing is 0.5% market share.
Yeah, it's nothing. Perfect. Thanks, guys.
No worries. All right, Matt, you have a question on Search Display Select and whether you can turn that on. You're live.
Hello?
Yep, we're here.
Oh, okay. You didn't say my name, I think. Are you talking to Matt Graves, Joe?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Hey, everybody. We have lots of campaigns that are set to search, and we've dabbled with the display network, but we end up turning off just those straight display campaigns. Is it just as simple as a setting where I would turn on a search campaign to become a search network display select?
Yes, it's a campaign type. That's it.
So it's just to pop into the settings, and so if I do the test that you had selected where run it for a week, I'd be able to go backwards and turn it off if necessary?
Yep.
Okay.
Now, the one thing is, if you had ads, image ads to run, you would have better performance than if you're using text ads. And so, there is some tools in AdWords called the Display Ad Builder. It's these tools that kind of templates for building some media, decent image ads. And so if you could invest a few minutes in trying to come up with some creative to run with that, you would definitely see that in the results.
Okay, that answers my question. Thanks very much.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. Chris, you've got a question here about grabbing order totals from clicks. Go ahead.
I do. Hey, thanks for touching on that before. My question is, I'm in the cellular market where clicks can be expensive and profit margins are low. So if I'm paying for a click for somebody to buy a car charger, and I'm paying dollars for that click, it can only net a $3 profit. But some people buy a charger, a case, or maybe they're buying 20 chargers. So I'm trying to grab order totals based on the keyword clicks, so I can really monitor and see if it's returning a profit, and how I would go about grabbing those totals.
Sure. So there's two ways to do this easily with AdWords. Number one, if you are using Google Analytics and the Google Analytics has already been modified to pull in your shopping data, then you can import those values back to AdWords. That requires a little bit more work on the setup, but it gives you better holistic data. The simpler way to do it is, are you using the AdWords conversion script now?
I'm not.
Okay, so if you go into your AdWords account, you can go to the Tools menu, and there's a conversion tracking section. And you can just fill out the form, and they'll give you the code. When you look at it, there is a place for order value. And if you ask, you have to ask your shopping cart provider this variable. But a shopping cart checkout page usually has a variable for total cost of total sale amount, cost of shipping, total cost to consumer. You may not have the shipping stuff depending on how you do shipping. But so if you ask your host, your shopping cart person, what's the variable for my total value of that order? And they usually know this now. They get this question enough. You can take that variable, you put it into the AdWords code. It's a copy paste, and then put that on your checkout page, and then that should grab when someone checks out. Your system fills in the variables for what the consumer sees on the page that's rendered. Since that variable is also in the code grabs it and then pushes it back to AdWords, so you can see the actual revenue number from the keyword, the search query, the ad, all those good metrics inside your account.
Okay, and that's under the conversion tracking?
Yep, and so it's an advanced version implementation of the conversion tracking, but it's not a real hard change to make. The only trick really is you're going to have to ask your webmaster or whoever makes your shopping cart what that variable is.
It's a Yahoo store, so I'll need to know that bit of JavaScript or whatever that grabs the order total for the shopping cart.
If it's a Yahoo store, okay, so it's been a little while since I've worked with Yahoo stores, but they used to have on the back end a place where you could actually put in the conversion tracking scripts within their interface. So it might be really simple if that integration is still there.
Okay, great. And can something like that work with anything as well on video? Or is that on...
So you faded out. Can you say that one more time?
Oh, sure.
Hey, Michael, I can't hear that anymore. Can you?
Yeah, sorry, Chris, we can't hear you right now. If you type it in, we might be able to bring it up. And we're going to move on now. And Ivan, we've got your question here, and go ahead and ask it again.
Hello. My question is, what kind of display network targeting you recommend for a try? Like interest, placements, topics, or some combination probably?
What's your spend? How much do you spend a month?
It's like $20,000.
Do you have a
Where
website
you wanna...
that generates? Do you have a website that generates traffic?
Yeah, it's in U.S. market. It's in the health industry.
If you have a flow of visitors to your site, like the very first thing that you should be doing for display network targeting is the remarketing. Like that's the low-hanging fruit there. You're going to get 2 times the return on that than any other targeting method that they have to offer. After that, then it's kind of like there's a bunch of other targeting methods that you can try. That they won't be as good as remarketing because the best predictor of consumer behavior is their browsing behavior. Like if they're in the market for something and they're looking for it, that's a really strong signal. But beyond that, there's a couple other features that you could potentially use. One is called in-market targeting, and similar audiences. I think those would be also effective, but not as good as remarketing. Brad?
And then I would go to either keywords or placements or a combination of both. So if there's sites that regularly send you good traffic, placement targeting lets you put ads on those sites. If there's not, then try keywords. It's the most specific. Topics has more volume than keywords, but because it's much broader, it's got a higher CPA. So it's usually best to start with keywords first, then move to topics and kind of go up the chain based upon these have more volume but a higher CPA. So let's start with the best stuff first and then expand from there.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, sounds good. All right. Actually, Brad and Larry, thank you for staying over an extra 15 minutes. I know you both have busy schedules. For those of you who are still with us, your questions are captured. And here's what I'd recommend. If you have to leave us, send a little goodbye message in the question and answer window. Tell us something we could do better or something that we did that was really helpful. We'll take a look at the feedback. I know that WordStream is going to reach out to all of you who have attended here, and so will Market Motive. If you have a question that was unanswered, try and pick it up with the person who reaches back out to you. I know that Market Motive members can ask these questions inside of the forums where Brad answers directly, as well as Avinash Kaushik and the rest of the gang. And I do want to encourage you, as thanks to Larry for teaching with us today, please go check out his tools on wordstream.com. It's a great solution for SEM analysis. For those of you who have stuck it out, I do apologize we couldn't get to questions. There was literally hundreds of questions coming in. This has been a great audience, and we appreciate the time that both Larry and Brad have put in. There are workshops coming up for Market Motive, February 11th, to the social media workshop, how your Facebook audience can be hit with targeted campaigns, and then February 13th there's a free workshop at Market Motive on content marketing by Greg Jarbeau. Visit marketmotive.com or reach out to us if you'd like to attend one of those. And Gary, use WordStream, it rocks. I like that. And so I love the feedback that's coming in. Chris, yes, there were 7 best practices and only captured 5. We're going to make the slides available to you, and we'll reach out with a link so you can check out on those other 2 that Larry covered. So with that, any last words, Larry, for our audience as we sign off?
Yeah, thanks. It's great to be here. Thanks.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I really appreciate you coming with us, and I love the comments coming in. Do take a moment just to say farewell as you're leaving. Both Brad and Larry, you have organizer status, so please don't close down your environment because some of the best comments come in as people are taking off. And I'll go ahead and shut it down after a few minutes here, and then that way we can have comments to send back out, and both of our companies can be responsive to this excellent audience who's been a lot of fun to present to. Brad, thanks much for your work in answering here, and you guys did a great job.
Thanks, Michael. Always a pleasure to be on here.
All right, good. So I'm going to go ahead and mute us and just let the comments stream in, and then we'll send those out to you, Larry, as well as the Market Motive team.
Thanks.